Dr. Jinho Park stood at the window of Luna Command Station, watching the stars. He had been looking at space for 20 years, but today was different. Today, the stars were moving. "Sir, they're coming closer," said Mirako, his assistant. She pointed at the screen, showing dozens of bright dots getting bigger. "The alien ships will reach Earth in 6 hours." Jinho nodded slowly. For 50 years, humans had wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now they had their answer. They were not alone, and the visitors did not look friendly. The ships were huge. Each one was bigger than any building on Earth. There were hundreds of them, maybe thousands. They moved in perfect lines across space like soldiers marching to war. "Have they said anything yet?" Jinho asked. "Yes, sir. They started talking an hour ago. In every human language, even old ones that nobody speaks anymore." Mira's voice shook a little. "They know everything about us." Jinho felt cold. The aliens had been watching Earth for a long time. They knew about human wars, human weapons, human anger. They had studied everything. On Earth below, Wu Jin Li sat in the Global Communications Center in Seoul. He was young, only 25, but he was the best at understanding alien signals. Today his job was the most important in human history. The alien message came through clearly. The voice was strange, like metal scraping against stone, but the words were perfect Korean. "People of Earth," the voice said. "We are the Galactic Confederation. We represent 12 species from across the galaxy. We come in peace, but we bring serious news." Wu Jin recorded every word. His hands were shaking, but he kept working. This message would change everything. "We have watched your species for 50 of your years," the alien voice continued. "We have seen your wars. We have seen your violence. We have seen how you destroy your own kind for ideas and beliefs." The message paused. Wu Jin could hear his own heart beating in the silence. "This cannot continue. Your species is dangerous. If you leave your world and spread across the galaxy, you will bring chaos and death to peaceful civilizations. We cannot allow this." President Hana Shin received the message in her office in Seoul. She was a strong woman who had led Korea for 8 years, but this news made her feel small and weak. "What do they want?" she asked Daeho Kim, her military advisor. Daeho read from the alien message. "They want us to give up all our weapons. They want us to promise never to leave Earth. They want to put guards around our planet to make sure we stay here forever. And if we say no, they will use force to make us obey." Hana looked out her window at the city below. Millions of people were going about their normal lives, not knowing that everything was about to change. Ambassador Kaelvin stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking at the small blue planet ahead. He was tall and thin, with silver skin that changed color when he was nervous. Right now his skin was almost white with fear. "Are you certain about this plan?" asked General Texmore, a creature that looked like a walking crystal. "These humans seem so primitive. How dangerous can they really be?" Kaelvin touched the datapad in his hands. It contained 50 years of information about humanity. Wars that lasted for decades. Soldiers who chose death over surrender. People who killed millions for ideas that could not be touched or measured. "You don't understand," Kaelvin said quietly. "Every species in the galaxy fights for things they need: food, water, space to live, energy for their cities. These are logical reasons for war. But humans fight for concepts. They die for ideas. They will destroy themselves and others for things that exist only in their minds. Freedom, honor, justice, revenge." Kelvin's skin turned darker. "How do you negotiate with a species that values ideas more than life?" Back on Earth, Dr. Sujin Choi worked frantically in her laboratory. She was Earth's best expert on alien life, though until today she had only studied the possibility of such life. "The biological scans show 12 different species," she told the emergency council meeting. "Some breathe oxygen like us, others need different gases. Some are very hot, others very cold, but they all work together." "How is that possible?" asked General Taejun Nam. "They must have found ways to live in peace," Sujin said. These species have probably known each other for thousands of years. They learned to share resources and solve problems without fighting. And they think we can't do the same? Sujin was quiet for a moment. General, when they look at us, they don't see a young species learning to grow up. They see a species that has fought over 4,000 wars in recorded history. They see people who would rather die than change their minds. The emergency meeting continued for hours. Leaders from every nation joined the video call. Everyone had the same questions. What did the aliens really want? Could Earth fight them? Should Earth fight them? Captain Yuna O sat in her small ship orbiting Mars. She was supposed to be on a routine supply mission, but now her ship might be humanity's first line of defense. It was not much of a defense. Earth's space fleet was tiny compared to the alien armada. Captain, her communications officer called. We're getting a direct message from the alien fleet. It's meant for you personally. Yuna frowned. For me? Why? The message played on her screen. The same metal voice that had spoken to Earth now spoke directly to her. Captain O, we know about your battle at Titan's Rings. We know how you destroyed your own ship rather than let the rebels capture it. We know you chose death over surrender. Yuna's blood ran cold. That battle had happened 3 years ago. It was classified information. How did the aliens know about it? This is exactly what we fear about your species, the voice continued. You make decisions based on pride and principle, not logic and survival. This makes you unpredictable. This makes you dangerous. As the hours passed, more alien ships appeared around Earth. They formed a perfect sphere around the planet with gaps only at the north and south poles. It looked like a cage. Jinho Park watched from Luna Station as the last ships took their positions. Each ship was armed with weapons that could destroy entire cities. Earth was completely surrounded. Sir, Mira said softly, they're asking for our final answer. Will we accept their terms? Jinho looked at Earth floating like a blue jewel in space. Somewhere down there, billions of people were waiting to learn their fate. Would they accept a cage in exchange for safety? Would they give up their dreams of exploring the stars? He thought about Captain Yuna O, who chose to destroy her own ship rather than surrender. He thought about all the humans throughout history who had died for ideas and principles. Were the aliens right to fear such people? Tell them, Jinho said slowly, that humanity needs time to consider their offer. But even as he said it, he knew the decision had already been made. Humans had never accepted cages willingly. They never would. The galaxy had sent peace envoys to Earth, but they had also brought an ultimatum that would force humanity to choose between safety and freedom. For any other species, it would be an easy choice. For humans, it was the beginning of something the galaxy had never seen before. 3 days later, Ambassador Kelvin stepped off his shuttle at New Geneva Diplomatic Station. The building had been built in just 72 hours, the fastest construction project in human history. It was ugly and simple, but it would have to do. Behind Kelvin came 11 other beings. Dr. Sujin Choi watched them through the security cameras and felt her breath catch. Each alien was stranger than anything she had imagined. There was Hive Queen Zex Tala, who looked like a giant ant made of metal. Her 6 legs clicked against the floor as she walked. Next came Crystal Singer Vorth, whose body was made of living glass that changed colors with each step. The strangest was Mind Shaper Ul, who had no solid body at all but floated in a containment suit filled with glowing gas. They're beautiful, whispered Mirako, who was helping with security. They're terrified, Sujin corrected. She had studied the alien's body language for 3 days. Every species showed fear in different ways. Kelvin's silver skin kept changing colors. The Crystal Singer's light was dim and nervous. Even the gas creature in the suit was moving in tight, worried circles. President Hana Shin met the delegation in the main conference room. She had chosen to wear a simple black suit, nothing fancy or threatening. Behind her sat the best minds humanity could gather in 3 days. Welcome to Earth, Hana said in careful, slow English. We are honored by your visit. Calvin's skin flickered from silver to pale blue. President Shin, we must speak plainly. Your species is in great danger, not from us, but from yourselves. Dr. Sujin Choi leaned forward. She had been chosen to ask the important questions. Ambassador, we don't understand why you fear us. We are a young species. We have never left our own solar system. How can we threaten a galaxy full of advanced civilizations? The crystal singer named Vorth spoke, his voice like wind chimes. Dr. Choi, may I ask you a question? Why did your people fight the War of 2157? Sujin blinked. The War of 2157 had been a conflict between the Mars colonies and Earth. It lasted 3 years and killed thousands of people. They fought over colonial independence. Mars wanted to govern itself. And what resources were they fighting for? Asked Hive Queen Zextala. Resources? Sujin was confused. It wasn't about resources. It was about freedom and self-determination. The aliens looked at each other. Several of them made sounds that might have been their version of gasps. Kelvin's skin turned almost white. You just proved our point, Dr. Choi. Your people killed thousands of their own kind for concepts that have no physical reality. Military. Advisor Daeho Kim spoke up. With respect, Ambassador, don't your people ever fight for principles? Mindshaper Ul's voice came from speakers in his containment suit. General Kim, my species has fought 17 wars in the past 1,000 years. Every war was about territory we needed for expansion. We could point to maps and say, we need this land to feed our growing population. The crystalline hegemony fought 9 wars, added Vorth. All were for access to specific energy sources we needed to survive. The hive minds fought 6 wars, said Zextala. Each was to protect our breeding colonies from species that wanted to steal our nesting grounds. Kelvin's skin was now cycling through colors rapidly. Every species in the galaxy fights for things they can touch, measure, and divide. Food, water, energy, space to live. When we fight over these things, we can negotiate. We can share. We can find solutions. But humans, said Ul, fight for ideas. Professor Min Jae-yoon had been quiet during the meeting. He was a philosopher who had been brought in to help explain human nature to the aliens. Now he spoke carefully. Ambassador, are you saying that no other species in the galaxy has ever fought for justice? For freedom? For honor? Justice is making sure everyone gets their fair share of resources, Kelvin replied. Freedom is having access to the territory and materials your species needs to survive. Honor is being recognized for your contributions to your people's well-being. Min-jae shook his head. That's not how humans see those concepts. We know, said Vorth quietly. That's what terrifies us. Dr. Sujin Choi pulled up a holographic display. Let me show you something. This is footage from the Battle of Titan's Rings 3 years ago. The room filled with the image of Captain Yuna Oh, standing on the bridge of her ship. The recording showed her final moments before she activated the self-destruct system. Captain Oh had been ordered to surrender her ship to avoid civilian casualties. Sujin explained. The logical choice was to give up and save lives. On the recording, Captain Yuna spoke to her crew. I will not let terrorists use our weapons against innocent people, even if it costs us everything. The aliens watched in horrified silence as the ship exploded, taking Captain Yuna and her crew with it. She gained nothing from this action, said Kyle Vin, his voice barely a whisper. Her ship was destroyed. Her crew was killed. The military situation did not improve. She died for a principle that existed only in her mind. She died to prevent evil, said Min-jae firmly. She chose to sacrifice herself rather than let others suffer. But evil is subjective, protested Hive Queen Zextala. What you call evil, the rebels called necessary action. Exactly, said President Hana Shin. That's why it required a choice. Captain O had to decide what was right, even when others disagreed. Mindshaper Ul's gas swirled faster in his containment suit. This is impossible to calculate. How do you make decisions when there is no objective answer? We use our conscience, said Min-jae. We try to choose what will cause the least harm and the most good. But who decides what is good? Asked Vorth. Each person decides for themselves. The room fell silent. Several aliens made distressed sounds. Kelvin's skin had turned almost black. Professor Yoon, you're describing a species where every individual believes they have the right to determine universal moral principles. Yes. And they will fight and die to enforce their personal version of morality. If they believe it's important enough, yes. Even when fighting is hopeless. Sometimes, especially when fighting is hopeless. Dr. Sujin Choi showed another recording. This one showed human peacekeepers in the African conflict of 2089, standing between two warring tribes despite being outnumbered 1,000 to 1. These soldiers knew they would probably die, she said. They stayed anyway because they believed it was right to protect civilians. Madness, whispered Zextala. Nobility, countered Daeho Kim. What's the difference? Asked Kelvin. The question hung in the air like a weight. The humans looked at each other, realizing for the first time how strange they must seem to the rest of the galaxy. Ambassador, said President Hana slowly, what exactly are you afraid we'll do if we join the galactic community? Kelvin's skin flickered through several colors before settling on deep purple. We're afraid you'll decide that some of our civilizations are evil and need to be corrected. We're afraid you'll fight wars not to gain territory or resources, but to impose your moral beliefs on others. We're afraid, added Vorth, that you'll spread the idea that individuals should choose their own version of right and wrong, rather than accepting the decisions of their leaders and experts. Most of all, said Ul, we're afraid that other species will start to think like you, that they'll start to believe some things are worth dying for, even when dying accomplishes nothing practical. The humans sat in stunned silence. They had expected the aliens to fear human weapons or human aggression. Instead, the galaxy feared human idealism. You think our morality is a disease? Said Minjae quietly. Not a disease, said Kelvin. A force of nature. Like a storm or a wildfire. Beautiful, perhaps, but impossible to control or predict. Dr. Sujin Choi understood now why the alien ships formed a cage around Earth. They weren't just trying to contain human bodies. They were trying to contain human ideas. The meeting continued for hours, but the core problem became clearer with each exchange. Humans saw their willingness to fight for principles as their greatest strength. The aliens saw it as their most dangerous weakness. As the delegation prepared to return to their ships, Ambassador Kelvin made one final statement. President Shin, we offer you peace, safety, and prosperity. All we ask in return is that you contain your species' tendency to fight for abstract concepts, accept practical reality, make decisions based on logic and survival, not emotion and principle. President Hana looked around the room at her advisors, at the greatest minds humanity could gather. Then she looked back at the alien ambassador. Ambassador, what you're asking us to give up isn't just our worst trait. It's also our best one. Kelvin's skin turned the deepest black any of the humans had seen. That, he said quietly, is exactly what we were afraid you would say. 2 weeks after the first meeting, Ambassador Kelvin announced a test. The Galactic Confederation would create a crisis situation to see how humans would react. They chose Proxima Station, a small research facility orbiting Earth's closest star neighbor. Commander Hyunsu Bae received the emergency call while he was eating breakfast on Luna Station. His coffee was still hot when he ran to the command deck. Sir, we have a situation, reported Lieutenant Kyung-min Lee. Proxima Station is under attack by raiders from the Zelth Empire. They've taken hostages. Hyunsu studied the data on his screen. Proxima Station housed 200 researchers, both human and alien. The attackers had control of the station's weapons and were demanding that Earth surrender its space fleet. How many attackers? 25, sir. They have advanced weapons and have sealed themselves in the station's main hub with 50 hostages. What Hyunsu didn't know was that the crisis was fake. The Galactic Confederation had created it to test human reactions. The attackers were actually volunteers from different alien species, and the hostages were in no real danger. Ambassador Cale Vin watched from his ship as human military forces mobilized. He expected the humans to calculate the odds, weigh the costs, and make a logical decision. Every other species in the galaxy would either negotiate for the release of some hostages or abandon the station entirely. "What are they doing?" asked Crystal Singer Vorth as he watched the human response unfold. Earth's small space fleet was racing toward Proxima Station at maximum speed. But more concerning was the flood of volunteers. Hundreds of humans had immediately signed up for the rescue mission, despite knowing it would probably be a suicide run. On Earth, Yoon-Jung Lim was working frantically in the diplomatic center. She was Earth's best negotiator, and her job was to talk the attackers into releasing the hostages. "This is Earth diplomat Yoon-Jung Lim," she broadcast to the station. "We want to discuss terms for the safe release of all hostages." The fake Zelth commander replied with rehearsed demands that were designed to be impossible to meet. The Confederation experts had calculated that humans would either give up or choose to sacrifice the station to prevent a larger war. They were wrong. Sunho Park was fixing pipes in the lower levels of Proxima Station when the attack began. He was Jinho Park's younger brother, but where Jinho was careful and thoughtful, Sunho was impulsive and brave. When the lockdown alarm sounded, Sunho hid in the maintenance tunnels. He could have stayed there safely until the crisis was over. Instead, he started moving toward the main hub where the hostages were being held. "This is Sunho Park," he whispered into his communicator. "I'm inside the station. I can reach the weapons control room through the air ducts." Commander Hyun-Soo's voice crackled back. "Negative, Mr. Park. Stay where you are. That's an order." "Sir, with respect, I'm a civilian. You can't order me to do anything." Dr. Bora Kim was one of the hostages in the main hub. She was a scientist, not a soldier, but she had been quietly studying the attackers' behavior. Something seemed strange about their tactics. "They're being too careful," she whispered to another hostage. "Real raiders would have killed someone by now to show they were serious," but Dr. Bora Kim didn't know the test was fake. She was making observations about what she believed were genuine threats to her life. When Sunho Park's voice came through the station's communication system, announcing his plan to disable the attackers' weapons, Dr. Bora Kim made a decision that shocked the watching aliens. "I'll help," she broadcast publicly. "I know the station's systems better than anyone." Commander Hyun-Soo tried to stop them both. "This is insane. You're civilians. You have no military training." "Commander," Bora Kim replied calmly, "some things are more important than training." The aliens watching the situation couldn't believe what they were seeing. The humans weren't calculating odds or making strategic decisions. They were simply deciding what was right and acting on it. Hive Queen Zextala's mechanical voice buzzed with confusion. "The maintenance worker gains nothing by risking his life. The scientist gains nothing by helping him. They are not soldiers. This is not their duty." "But they're doing it anyway," observed Mindshaper Ul Kelvin's skin was cycling through colors so rapidly it looked like a strobe light. "They're not weighing costs and benefits. They're not considering strategic value. They're making purely emotional decisions." "Moral decisions," corrected Dr. Sujin Choi, who was monitoring the alien communications from Earth. The rescue attempt was chaotic and dangerous. Sunho Park crawled through air ducts that were never meant for human bodies. Dr. Bora Kim hacked into computer systems while fake weapons were pointed at her head. Neither of them knew the weapons weren't real. Commander Hyun-Soo's fleet arrived just as Sunho reached the weapons control room. The young maintenance worker's plan was simple and insane. He would overload the station's power grid, shutting down all systems for exactly 30 seconds. In that brief window, the rescue teams would storm the station. The plan had dozens of ways to fail. If the timing was wrong, everyone would die. If the power surge was too strong, the station would explode. If it was too weak, nothing would happen. "Sunho," Commander Hyun-Soo radioed, "you don't have to do this. We can find another way." "Commander, those people are counting on us. I won't let them down." Dr. Bora Kim, still pretending to be a helpless hostage, had managed to map the attackers' positions and transmit the data to the rescue team. She knew that if she was discovered, She would be the first one killed. Dr. Kim, the fake Zelth commander said, pointing a weapon at her. You're being very quiet. Are you planning something? Bora looked up at the alien who was pretending to threaten her life. I'm planning to go home to see my family, just like everyone else here. Ambassador Calvin felt something he had never experienced before as he watched the humans work together. It wasn't fear exactly. It wasn't admiration either. It was something between wonder and terror. They're not following any logical pattern, he reported to the Confederation Council. The maintenance worker should be hiding. The scientists should be cooperating with the attackers to stay alive. The commander should be cutting his losses. But they're not, replied the council leader. No. They're risking everything for people they barely know, for principles they can't even define clearly. When Sunho triggered the power surge, the station went completely dark for 30 seconds. In that brief time, Commander Hyunsu's soldiers stormed through airlocks and rescue hatches with perfect coordination. The fake battle was over in minutes. The volunteer attackers surrendered as planned, and the hostages were rescued without a single injury. But the real impact of the test was just beginning. Lieutenant Kyungmin Lee monitored the alien communication channels as the Confederation leaders discussed what they had witnessed. Did you see how the humans reacted when they thought people were in danger? One alien voice asked. They didn't hesitate, they didn't calculate, they just acted. The maintenance worker could have died, the scientist could have been killed. The commander could have lost his entire fleet, and they did it anyway. For strangers, for principles, for ideas they can't even touch. Back on Earth, President Hana Shin received a summary of the test from her military advisors. She read the report twice before looking up at General Daeho Kim. They created a fake crisis to see how we would react? Yes, ma'am. And according to our intelligence, they're more frightened of us now than they were before. Because we saved the hostages? Because of how we saved them. And why? Dr. Sujin Choi had been analyzing the alien communications for hours. The fragments she could understand painted a clear picture. The galaxy had never seen anything like human moral reasoning. President Shin, she reported, the aliens are having emergency meetings. They're not discussing whether to destroy us anymore. They're discussing whether they can afford not to destroy us. What do you mean? They're afraid that if other species see how humans behave, they might start behaving the same way. They're afraid that human morality is contagious. Sunho. Park was treated as a hero when he returned to Earth, but he didn't understand why. In interviews, he kept saying the same thing. Anyone would have done the same thing. Dr. Bora Kim also downplayed her role. I just used my skills to help people. It's not a big deal. Commander Hyunsu was the most puzzled of all. We did our job. We saved people who needed saving. Why is everyone making such a big deal about it? The aliens found these reactions even more disturbing than the heroic actions themselves. The humans didn't think they had done anything special. They thought risking their lives for strangers was normal behavior. Ambassador Kelvin called for another meeting with human leaders. This time, when he arrived at New Geneva Station, his skin was a color none of the humans had seen before, deep red mixed with black. President Shin, he said without any diplomatic pleasantries, your people have failed our test. Failed? President Hana was confused. We saved all the hostages. That's exactly the problem. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The test hadn't been about whether humans could solve a crisis. It had been about whether they would choose practical solutions over moral ones. You were supposed to abandon the station, Calvin continued, or negotiate for the release of some hostages, or wait for a better opportunity. The ultimatum came on a Tuesday morning. Secretary General Chung Ho-seo read it 3 times before calling an emergency meeting of the United Earth Council. 72 hours, he announced to the assembled leaders. That's how long we have to accept their terms or face orbital bombardment. The alien fleet had grown larger overnight. What had been thousands of ships was now tens of thousands. They formed perfect geometric patterns around Earth. Their weapons pointed downward at the planet below. Ambassador Somin Kang had been working without sleep for 3 days, trying to find a diplomatic solution. She was Earth's first ambassador to the galaxy, A job that had been created just 2 weeks ago. Now she might also be the last. Have they given us any room to negotiate? Asked President Hana Shin. Soman shook her head. Their terms are final: complete disarmament, permanent isolation on Earth, and acceptance of Confederation oversight. No discussion, no compromise. General Daeho Kim studied the tactical reports. The alien weapons could destroy entire continents. Earth's defenses would last maybe an hour against such overwhelming force. We could fight, he said quietly. We would lose, but we could fight. That's exactly what they expect us to do, said Dr. Jinho Park, joining the meeting by video link from Luna Station. They think humans are violent and unpredictable. If we attack them, we prove their point. Commander Jiho Yoon had been unusually quiet during the emergency sessions. He commanded Earth's space fleet, such as it was. 50 ships against 10,000. The mathematics of the situation were clear. Secretary General, he said finally, I've been running calculations for 3 days. There's no way to win a military confrontation. Then we surrender? Asked President Hana. No, said Chang Hoseo. We surprise them. The Secretary General's plan was so unexpected that even his own advisors thought he had lost his mind. Instead of preparing for war or negotiating for better terms, he began drafting something that had never existed in galactic history, an offer of alliance between equals. Sir, protested General Daeho Kim, they have 10,000 ships pointed at our planet. This is not a negotiation between equals. Exactly, replied Chang Ho. Which is why they'll never see this coming. Ambassador Soman Kang refined the proposal, working with the best diplomatic minds on Earth. The document they created was unlike anything in the galaxy's political archives. Earth offered the Confederation not surrender, but partnership. Not submission, but cooperation. Not isolation, but integration on human terms. We offer you something you've never had, the proposal read. A species willing to fight for your freedom as hard as we fight for our own. Dr. Nayoung Oh had been studying human history to find examples that might convince the aliens. She was a military historian who specialized in what humans called just wars, conflicts fought for moral reasons rather than practical ones. Look at this, she told the council, projecting images onto the main screen. The Geneva Convention, created after our worst war. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The International Space Rescue Protocols. What's your point? Asked Secretary General Chang Ho. Humans don't just fight for principles. We create systems to protect those principles. We write laws that apply even to our enemies. Commander Jiho Yoon had been doing something that would have been impossible for any other species in the galaxy. While the aliens prepared for either human surrender or human aggression, he was preparing for human generosity. These aren't warships, he explained to his staff, showing them the schematics for Earth's space fleet. Oh, they have weapons, but look at the real design priorities. His aide, Captain Junho Ryu, studied the plans carefully. Sir, these ships are built for rescue operations, medical facilities, emergency supplies, radiation shielding for survivors. Exactly. We didn't build a fleet to conquer the galaxy. We built a fleet to help it. The aliens had spent 50 years studying human warfare, but they had somehow missed human compassion. They knew about every battle, every weapon, every military strategy, but they didn't understand why humans had spent just as much effort creating hospitals, relief organizations, and peacekeeping forces. Dr. Sujin Choi made this point in a special broadcast that was transmitted to the entire alien fleet. You've been studying our wars, she said, looking directly into the camera. But have you studied our peace? Do you know about Doctors Without Borders, the Red Cross, the United Nations peacekeeping forces? The broadcast continued for an hour, showing the aliens aspects of humanity they had never considered. Humans who traveled across the world to help strangers. Soldiers who risked their lives to protect civilians they had never met. Scientists who shared their discoveries freely instead of hoarding them for advantage. Ambassador Calvin watched the broadcast from his flagship, his skin cycling through colors rapidly. The information was disturbing in ways he couldn't explain, To his crew, "Are these claims accurate?" asked Hive Queen Zex Tala. "Our long-range sensors confirm the data. Humans regularly risk their lives to save members of different ethnic groups, different nations, even different species. But why? That's what we can't understand." The most disturbing part of the broadcast was a recording from the Mars colony crisis of 2089. When the colony's life support systems failed, Earth immediately sent rescue ships, despite the fact that Mars had declared independence just 2 years earlier. "They helped their political enemies," observed Crystal Singer Vorth. "This makes no strategic sense." "They didn't help their enemies," corrected Mindshaper Ull. "They helped people who needed help. The political situation was irrelevant." That's even worse. As the 72-hour deadline approached, something unexpected happened. Deep space monitors detected a new fleet approaching from the galactic core. These ships were different, darker, more aggressive, bristling with weapons. Lieutenant Kyung-Min Lee was the first to identify them. "Sir, those are Zelth Empire ships. Real ones this time." The Zelth Empire was the Confederation's greatest enemy, a collection of species that believed might made right. They had been watching the standoff around Earth with great interest. Admiral Minji Chuo, Earth's most senior space officer, realized the implications immediately. "They're not here for us. They're here to attack the Confederation fleet while it's concentrated in one place." The timing was perfect from the Zelth Empire's perspective. The Confederation ships were arranged in a defensive formation around Earth, not positioned for battle against another fleet. The aliens had been so focused on containing humanity that they had made themselves vulnerable to their real enemies. "This is our chance," said General Daeho Kim. "While they're fighting each other, we can help them," finished Secretary General Chang Ho-seo. The room fell silent. Every military advisor stared at him in shock. "Sir," said Commander Ji-ho Yoon, "carefully, the Confederation fleet has 10,000 ships pointed at our planet. They've threatened to destroy us. Why would we help them? Because it's right." Those 3 words launched the most important debate in human history. In conference rooms and command centers around the world, the question was argued passionately. Should humanity help the aliens who had threatened to destroy them? President Hana Shin cast the deciding vote. "We help them because that's who we are." The orders went out to Earth's small fleet. Move to support the Confederation against the Zelth Empire attack. Protect the ships that had been threatening to destroy Earth just hours earlier. Captain Junho Ryu received the orders while commanding a patrol ship near Jupiter. He read them twice, then called his crew together. "People, we're about to do something crazy. We're going to help the aliens who want to cage us fight the aliens who want to kill us." His weapons officer, Lieutenant Sumin Park, raised her hand. "Captain, that makes no sense strategically." "No, it doesn't. Are we doing it anyway?" "Yes." "Good. I was hoping you'd say that." The battle began as Earth's tiny fleet moved to intercept the Zelth Empire forces. 50 human ships against 3,000 enemy vessels, fighting to protect 10,000 Confederation ships that had been threatening to destroy Earth. Admiral Minji Choi commanded from the bridge of her flagship, watching as her small force charged into certain death. "All ships, this is Admiral Cho. Today we show the galaxy what humans fight for." "What do we fight for?" asked Captain Junho Ryu over the communication channel. "We fight so others can choose to be free." The first exchange of fire lit up space, around Earth. Human ships designed for rescue and exploration engaged Zelth Empire warships built for conquest and destruction. The outcome should have been predetermined. It wasn't. Ambassador Kyle Vin watched in amazement as human tactics defied everything the Confederation knew about space warfare. Human ships didn't try to destroy enemy vessels. They tried to disable them. They didn't target weapon systems to gain advantage. They targeted life support systems to force surrender and save lives. "They're fighting a war of mercy," whispered Hive Queen Zextala, "even against enemies who show them none." Most shocking of all was what happened when the human ship Harmony was critically damaged. Captain Junho Ryu could have retreated to save his crew. Instead, he positioned his dying ship between a damaged Confederation vessel and incoming Zelth Empire fire. His final transmission was heard by both fleets. "This is Captain Ryu. We're going to ram that Zelth battleship." 6 months after the Battle of Earth, Ambassador Calvin stood in the same conference room where the crisis had begun. But everything had changed. The room was bigger now, with seats for representatives from 47 different species. And at the head of the table sat not one leader, but 5. The Galactic Confederation Council and humanities representatives, working together as equals. Dr. Gaiyong Lim had been chosen as Earth's chief diplomat to the new Galactic Alliance. She was young for such an important job, only 32, but she understood something that older, more experienced diplomats did not: how to speak about human values in ways that other species could understand. "The Altarian trade dispute can be resolved simply," she said, addressing the mixed audience of humans and aliens. "Both sides want the same thing: prosperity for their people. The question is whether they'll achieve it through cooperation or competition." What seemed like a simple statement sent ripples of amazement through the alien delegates. For thousands of years, galactic politics had been about managing conflicts between species with incompatible needs. The idea that different groups could want the same fundamental thing was revolutionary. Chancellor Shungjin Nam had been elected to represent Earth's interests in the new galactic government. He was a careful, thoughtful man who had spent his career in international relations on Earth. Now he was learning that interstellar relations followed completely different rules. "Chancellor Nam," asked Crystal Singer-Vorth, "how do humans resolve disputes when both sides believe they are morally correct?" It was the question that had terrified the galaxy for months. How could you negotiate with a species that made decisions based on principles rather than interests? "We argue," Shungjin replied simply. "We present our cases, we listen to each other, and we try to find solutions that honor everyone's most important values. But what if compromise is impossible? Then, we agree to disagree, and we find ways to live with our differences." Hive Queen Zextala's mechanical voice buzzed with confusion. "But humans have fought wars over moral disagreements." "Yes, sometimes we have. When the stakes are high enough and the principles are important enough, we fight. But most of the time we find other ways." "How do you decide when fighting is necessary?" Shungjin thought carefully before answering. "We ask ourselves, will more people be helped or hurt by fighting? Will the world be better or worse afterward? Are we fighting to impose our will or to protect people who can't protect themselves?" The conversation continued for hours, as it had for months. The galaxy was slowly learning to understand human moral reasoning, and humans were learning to explain their values in ways that made sense to species with very different minds. But the real changes were happening beyond the conference. Rooms. Commander. Young Ho Ko was leading the first joint human-alien rescue mission in the Vega system, where a solar flare had damaged several mining stations. His crew included 3 humans, 2 Altarians, and 1 crystalline engineer. "Commander," reported his Altarian navigation officer, "the station with the most survivors also has the most dangerous approach. The radiation levels could damage our ship. A year ago, this would have been a simple calculation for any species in the galaxy. Save the stations you can reach safely, abandon the ones you can't." But young Ho Ko was human, and his values were starting to spread to his alien crew. "How many people are on that station?" he asked. 47. "But Commander, the logical choice is to rescue the 300 people on the safer stations first." Young Ho looked at his mixed crew. "Does anyone here think we should abandon 47 people because it's dangerous to save them?" The crystalline engineer spoke first. "Commander, my species would normally calculate risk versus benefit, but I have been studying human ethics. These 47 individuals chose dangerous work to provide resources for their families. They deserve our protection." The Altarian officer was quiet for a moment. 6 months ago, I would have said we should save the greatest number. Now, I think we should try to save everyone, even if it's dangerous. Because it's dangerous. If we don't take risks for others, who will? The rescue mission succeeded, but not without cost. The ship was damaged and 2 crew members were injured. By old galactic standards, it was a failure. By human standards, it was a triumph. Back on Earth, Wu Jin Li was working on something that would have been unimaginable a year ago, a translation guide for human emotions. Other species needed help understanding what humans meant when they talked about guilt, honor, justice, and love. The problem, he explained to Dr. Sujin Choi, is that most alien languages don't have words for concepts that exist only in the mind. Have you made progress? Some. The Altarians are starting to understand guilt. They call it the weight of wrong choices. The Crystallines understand honor. They call it the light that attracts others. But justice is still impossible to translate. Why? Because justice requires the idea that some things are wrong even when they're legal, and some things are right even when they're forbidden. Most species can't grasp that concept. Dr. Sujin Choi smiled. Give them time. They're learning. The proof of that learning came during the Centauri crisis. A group of Zelth Empire survivors had taken refuge in the Centauri system, claiming they wanted to abandon their warlike culture and join galactic civilization. The traditional response would have been simple: reject them as untrustworthy enemies. But the galaxy was changing. President Hana Shin argued for accepting the refugees. People can change. We should give them that chance. Ambassador Kyle Vin, whose skin now showed colors of curiosity rather than fear, supported her. If humans can forgive us for threatening their world, perhaps we can forgive former enemies who seek redemption. The decision to accept the Zelth refugees was the first time in galactic history that former enemies had been welcomed based on hope rather than evidence. It was a purely human concept that was slowly spreading to other species. Not everything was perfect. There were still disputes, misunderstandings, and conflicts, but they were different kinds of problems now. On New Geneva Station, a small incident showed how much had changed. Young Hoko, now a civilian, was playing with his 5-year-old son in the station's park. Next to them, a young Altarian was teaching her offspring how to change colors to show emotions. "Papa," asked the human boy, "why do the Altarians look different from us?" Before young Ho could answer, the young Altarian spoke in careful, accented English. "We look different on the outside, but we want the same things on the inside." "What things?" "Safe places to live, people who love us, chances to help others." The human boy thought about this seriously. "Do you want to be friends?" "Yes." "Do you?" "Yes." It was the simplest conversation possible, but it represented the most complex change in galactic history. For the first time, different species were teaching their children to look for similarities rather than differences. The formal signing of the Terra Accords took place 1 year after the Battle of Earth. Representatives from 12 species gathered to create a new kind of galactic government, one based on human principles of individual rights, voluntary cooperation, and moral obligation. Secretary General Chung Ho-seo signed for Earth. His words at the ceremony would be remembered for centuries. "Today we prove that the universe is big enough for all of us to choose our own paths, as long as those paths don't block others from choosing theirs." Ambassador Calvin signed for the Confederation. His skin showed colors that human observers described as hopeful rainbow. Humanity has taught us that some things are worth fighting for, not because they benefit us, but because they are right. Today we choose to fight for each other's freedom. Dr. Min Jae-yoon, the philosopher who had helped explain human values to the aliens, was chosen to write the preamble to the new galactic constitution. It began with words that would have been impossible to write a year earlier. "We, the species of the galaxy, choose to build a civilization based not on what we can take from each other, but on what we can give to each other." The changes were spreading beyond politics. Scientists from different species were sharing discoveries freely. Merchants were trading for mutual benefit rather than maximum profit. Artists were creating works that celebrated diversity rather than superiority. But the most important change was in how the galaxy thought about conflict. When the Rigel system faced invasion by a rogue faction, 43 different species sent ships to help defend it. Not because they had strategic interests in Rigel, but because they had learned from humans that protecting the innocent was a moral obligation. Commander Minji Cho, now Admiral of the Joint Galactic Defense Force, led the defense of Rigel. Her fleet included ships from every member species, all following tactics based on human principles. Disable rather than destroy, protect rather than conquer, save rather than sacrifice. The battle was won without a single civilian casualty. The rogue faction surrendered when they realized the entire galaxy was united against them. 5 years after the aliens first arrived at Earth, Ambassador Cale Vin returned to the planet that had changed everything. He came not as a conqueror or a judge, but as a friend. Dr. Jinho Park, now Director of Interstellar Relations, met him at the same Luna station where the crisis had begun. Ambassador, what do you think of humanity now?